This is Sleeping in Trees, the audiobook. Chapter 34, The Chase. My home was not large. At least in 1956, when we moved in, it was an unassuming, long, skinny ranch with 3 bedrooms lined up on one end and a kitchen and garage anchoring the other. The bedrooms were the pass-through variety, one connected to another. To get from my bedroom to the last, one had to walk through the first 2, as well as a bathroom that separated the ones at the end of the line. Making it a little easier and allowing for more privacy, the patio and pool ran along the backside. One could walk down the patio between the pool and the bedrooms and enter any one of them through French doors. This one architectural feature, in itself, was probably responsible for saving Ding one day from coming to great harm, or worse. His bedroom was the last in the string of 3, and Lobster's was the one in the middle. If one stood on the patio and looked at the bedroom wing, our rooms were lined up just like every picture my mother ever took of us on the first day of school, standing in the front of the house. Mom and Dad liked consistency and order, but it was usually in short supply with a young hyperactive brood in perpetual motion. As Lobster began to move through his elementary school years, one day my parents brought home a large desk for his bedroom. They purchased it at the local Ethan Allen furniture store. It was the popular colonial style, well crafted and made of dark cherry wood with brass pulls. Particle board was an invention yet to come. My parents felt it could somehow help inspire and anchor him in the school years ahead in their tireless effort to promote better study habits. For Lobster, study habits, like a few other things, went begging. School just did not engage him. He had far too many other more interesting pursuits. Rather than filling his desk with notebooks, pencils, pens, erasers, textbooks, and the like, it was full of the devices that Lobster found much more entertaining and held, to him, greater utility. Pull open a drawer, and one might find fishhooks, monofilament, and lead sinkers. Knives, both large and small, were inside. Need a 14-tool Swiss Army knife, including tiny tweezers, and a toothpick? How about a Bowie knife? Maybe a World War II vintage German bayonet was required for a unique job. All could be found in Lobster's desk. He also had a drawer that held his firecracker and cherry bomb supply, when he could secure some. Another drawer held his starting pistols. They shot .22 caliber blanks, so we just called them blank guns. They were Italian-made and looked very much like the real thing, so real, in fact, that there was an incident one Saturday in London's Queen's Park with Lobster, me, an older woman, 2 fox terriers, 2 blank guns, and 6 unarmed bobbies. It was a tense moment until cooler heads prevailed. Perhaps my favorite implement was his hatchet. It was beautifully designed, made of highly polished stainless steel. One could mistake it for chrome, it shined so brightly. I knew it wasn't because chrome, a metallic coating, cannot hold an edge. The shank had a smooth curve, and the handle was made from stacked, variegated leather, tanned and burnished to a high sheen. A small leather holster finished off the attractive package. The bottom drawer held an unusual possession. One birthday, Lobster received a morbidly odd gift from Mom and Dad. It was a hobby model replica made of plastic to be assembled with model glue. Usually, we'd get a fighter plane or a bomber or maybe a classic motor car. Not this year. The model was a fully functional replica of a French guillotine. This must have been a popular toy when it hit the market in the 1960s. What child wouldn't want one, and what parent wouldn't want to accommodate such desires and promote such gore? America was moving rapidly forward with interactive toys. Within a few days, Lobster had twisted free all the little plastic pieces from the molded frame and glued together the model. He had it working in fine order. It even came with a plastic convict, most certainly guilty of some horrible malfeasance, and thus most deserving of having his head lopped off by the hooded executioner, Lobster. When the guillotine blade fell, released by a small lever pulled by a string, his head even popped off and dropped right into the plastic replica basket. The manufacturer, Revell, had really pulled out all the stops in their toy R&D lab, eliminating anything that might dilute a true, lifelike, deathlike experience for young children lucky enough to add this model to their toy collection. A week later, Lobster walked into my room quite excited. He had made a modification to his model guillotine. I could only imagine. I trotted into his room to check it out. Even I was shocked. It was no longer a model at all, but a fully functional guillotine, the real thing, just much smaller. He had ingeniously replaced the plastic blade with a real razor blade, and had even managed to fit it at an angle in true guillotine style. To add velocity and power to the drop of the cutting blade, he had attached a few small pieces of lead to the blade mounting. True creative genius. I was impressed, but also reluctant to inquire about his plans for his miniature French killing machine. Young boys are rough on things. It was not long before Lobster's colonial-style desk was injured with its first large scratch. This was inevitable, given the contents of the desk and the generally rambunctious nature of any adolescent. It was a pretty good scratch, made when he dragged a metal tackle box across it on his way to go fishing at Rock Lake. Mom discovered it shortly thereafter, and there was some scolding. Dad repaired it the same day, as good as new, probably better. After all, this was kind of what Dad did, better than anything else, being a master craftsman and all. Not long after that, Lobster stormed into his room one day after failing a math test, pulled out his German bayonet, and made his best attempt to impale his desk. This made a pretty good puncture wound right on the top. No Dad involvement in this repair, he thought. He'd do it himself. Later that night, I found Lobster rummaging around in the shop, looking for wood putty and stain. He found what he needed and did a surprisingly good job. I couldn't even tell it had ever been wounded. Life rolled on, and Lobster more and more often assaulted his desk with a knife or axe when things were not going his way. Mom would find the damage during the day, and Lobster would come home after school to yet another spanking. My dad would do his best to repair the scars, but it was not long before he was falling behind. So prolific was Lobster in inflicting harm on the defenseless desk. One day I popped into my room after school and dropped my books on the bed. Lobster's door was shut tight, and I could hear a serious commotion on the other side. There were grunts and groans and lots of banging and what seemed like chopping sounds. I turned the knob silently and pushed his door open ever so slowly, peering with one eye between the crack. I was stunned. There Lobster stood before me, with my favorite hatchet high overhead and in full swing. He was murdering his desk, once and for all. Again and again he came down upon it with a shiny axe. Chips and splinters flew. The top was devastated, with chunky hacks all across it. Each of the four corners of the top had been lopped completely off, as had been the desk's little feet. It now sat a few inches lower on the ground. The front drawer facings were obliterated. He continued to pound away at it in rage and fury. Before long, it was a wreck, barely recognizable as the beautiful colonial piece that probably left the factory somewhere in North Carolina not long before, shiny and smelling of varnish and rubbing oils. He would have a heck of a time writing his next book report, I thought. I was terrified. If a ding and scratch had elicited a scolding and thorough spanking, What would the complete annihilation of the desk warrant? Soon enough came the answer. Nothing. There was no response whatsoever. Within the first 24 hours, I held my breath, waiting for Armageddon. When it didn't begin, I held it for another day. Nothing. My parents were apparently defeated. Lobster had prevailed. For some reason, they had chosen to move on. His desk was beyond repair, and its carcass sat for a very long time next to his bed. Late on a very hot Sunday afternoon, I was messing around with Lobster in his bedroom. Ding would usually be out on Biscayne Bay, securing another trophy. This was the era of the real trophy. While the plastic chrome figures, on little mahogany or marble pedestals, were beginning to make their debut and muscle into the award ceremonies due to increasing costs and margin compression. Even yacht clubs have margin compression. The awards for most of the regattas in that era were still often silver-engraved plates and trays. For competitive yachtspeople of all ages and all sailing classes, it was truly a glorious time. But you had to win, or place, to be recognized. Just showing up didn't get it done. The self-esteem boosting mantra, "Everyone's a winner," had yet to sweep the American land and its bays. Ding was a dominator, and virtually untouchable for a number of years as he raced his custom-built pram all over Biscayne Bay. He was light, smart, and strategic. He was aggressive and competitive. He also had a better boat. When my family entered the realm of competitive sailboat racing, the class of boats for 4-foot-tall kids was an 8-foot dinghy. The proper term for the craft was a pram. It had a squared-off bow and a sail that looked like someone had taken a large pair of scissors and sheared off the top at a 45-degree angle. I did not know who built the boats that the young racers sailed, but they left much to be desired. They were not built for speed, but rather to last, to survive the abuse of adolescence out on the bay. They were very heavy. I remember riding home from the club in our station wagon one Sunday evening. I always sat in the way back jump seat so I could peer out at the cars following us. It was dark inside except for the soft illumination of the dash. My dad and Mom were quietly discussing the sorry state of the crafts Ding was racing. She did not often mince words and pointed out that they were basically junk, and urged Dad to build his talented son a proper racing pram. He took note and set to work doing just that. Dad disappeared into his shop, and within a few months, a beautiful new pram emerged like none seen before. Carried out under the swaying palms of Coral Reef Yacht Club and placed slightly on the grass, it was a stunning piece of craftsmanship. Every component had been reconsidered, redesigned, and redefined for lightness, strength, and speed. All the young skippers and their parents gathered around and commented in subdued tones, while Ding rigged the impressive craft for its maiden voyage. For me, the best part of the sleek pram was the paint job. All the other dinghies that went before it were homogeneous with monotone blue paint, or worse, just a coat of varnish. Well, that would just not do. Dad, the craftsman, and artist both, created a striking lacquered finish of white and gray with a black and white checkerboard insert near the bow, and a perfect rendition of the Roadrunner cartoon character in full sprint racing away from Wile E. Coyote. It was a brilliant piece of work and a racing craft so light and agile that Ding was instantly a competitor beyond compare. It was named Beep Beep. For years, my mother insisted the Roadrunner in the cartoon was actually saying Meep Meep. Unresolved, the racing craft's original name remained, painted in a greenish aqua across its transom. Ding won race after race, running away often by a full length of one of the 3 course legs. Almost instantly, the other parents were seen in quiet but dogged pursuit of my dad. There were discreet discussions behind a palm or in the parking lot, at the snack bar, at the real bar, out on the committee boat. They cornered and badgered him. There was no getting away No place to hide. Orders for copies of the Speedster pram rolled in. No one even asked the price. I remember overhearing a conversation one night between my parents as they enjoyed an after-dinner drink seated at their mahogany bar. I picked up just bits and pieces while sitting across the kitchen at a tall counter stool, fiddling around as I eavesdropped. Something about so-and-so wanting one of Dad's prams to help reduce their consistently last-place finishes, but being a little short on funds at that time to actually pay for one. Over the next couple of months, Dad toiled away in his shop to avoid becoming asphyxiated from all the fumes produced in the building of a wooden boat. Fiberglass is even worse. He would open up the yawning shop door. This improved airflow, but made it unbearably hot. As he worked, he sweated copiously. I remember watching him one afternoon sanding a hull as drop after drop of sweat splattered onto the dry wood. He just sanded the moisture right into the finish. He had told me there were both wet and dry sanding methods, so I figured that this was the wet one. Soon the new pram, another small masterpiece, was delivered to the excited young girl and her grateful parents. She quickly marched up the ranks, though the results were priceless. The racing pram had no price, as no payment would be accepted. Dad was that kind of man. Within 18 months, with a growing fleet of new prams racing about, Biscayne Bay regattas took on a completely new and refreshingly colorful look. The cheering changed as well. Instead of "Go, Dougie," or "Come about, Claudia," it was "Centerboard down, Stingray," "Trim your sail, Pussycat," or "Come about, Alley-oop." The races were also completed, thankfully, much more quickly, allowing parents more time to socialize at the lively yacht club bar. It was managed with an iron fist by a crusty old yachtsman named Jim. Occasionally I'd sneak into this forbidden zone in need of my parents, usually to secure permission to do something they did not want me to do. While I'd attempt to interrupt some important conversation about whitecaps, a lost centerboard, or zinc oxide for sunburned noses, I'd try to pinch a maraschino cherry out of Jim's bar tray that also held green olives stuffed with bright red pimentos. There were also tiny onions and limes, and he always had the little plastic pirate sabers used to skewer the condiments. I would pilfer a couple on occasion, too, and have miniature sword fights in the car with Lobster on the way home. Usually caught in the act, Jim would scowl at me and suggest I should head out to the front street and play under the trucks. Then he'd wink, and I'd skedaddle out of the raucous bar. My dad's custom Speedster prams had made him a real hero among the local yachting set. He was even nominated for the next club Commodore, but modestly declined the appointment. He preferred a low profile and was not big on committees and bureaucratic maneuverings. Back to the chase. It was odd and unfortunate that Ding was around that Sunday afternoon. He had passed through Lobster's in my room several times. Each trip through was a small invasion of privacy. Before long, Lobster got fed up. The next time Ding sauntered through, he made his move. Creeping up behind him, Lobster buried his knuckled-up fist into the center of his back with force. One could almost feel the sharp and intense pain as his fist embedded itself between Ding's shoulder blades. The punch had to hurt like hell, given the dull thunk it made and the convulsive reaction by Ding as he went to the ground. He was caught completely unaware. It was one of the great surprise attacks. An epic brawl was quickly underway. Feet and fists were flying. I backed away and hopped onto Lobster's bed. This was a serious ruckus, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I heard the smacking sounds of fists on flesh as they struck home. There were many a fracas on a weekly basis in the neighborhood, but few slipped into such violence. The two of them were really going at it. I couldn't exactly tell who was winning the brawl, and within a couple of minutes Ding had decided he'd had enough. Based on Lobster's intensity and the odd look in his eyes, Ding must have concluded there would be no armistice any time soon. He was in serious pain already from the pummeling, so he ran for it. In a flash, he broke away from Lobster's angry grip and sprinted down the hallway and out into the dining room. Lobster was right on his tail. Now that my parents had solved the desk hacking problem by just not addressing it, Lobster had taken to wedging my favorite hatchet into the desktop for easy access. He kept it there, always at the ready. As he raced out of the room in pursuit of Ding, he deftly reached out and scooped it up. Now he's got him, I thought to myself, nervously. I scooted further back on the bed, as flat as I could possibly get up against the wall. I heard loud yelling and even louder pounding of feet. The din rose and fell as they circled what must have been the dining room table, then the pool table, then around through the kitchen and the den. Lobster had snapped. Ding was concerned for his very life, and I understood why. I could see the headline in the morning Miami Herald. Young boy hacks up older brother with hatchet over invasion of privacy. How unfortunate and gory. Just as I began to read the accompanying tragic story of suburban murder in my mind's eye, the rumbling and banging grew louder. They were headed back. I crouched down even lower as Ding blew through the room at top speed. He could run like the devil. Lobster could not. Ding had opened a significant gap on him during the interior lapse of the house. This was just good strategy by Ding. As he entered his bathroom, he made a second brilliant tactical decision, and this was the one that could have actually saved his butt, or skull, as it were. He slammed the bathroom door behind him as he raced through. His timing was impeccable, his good fortune immense. Unbeknownst to him, my favorite hatchet was at that very moment tumbling through the air behind him, and was quickly closing the gap between its highly polished, razor-sharp blade and the back of Ding's head. The door slammed shut, and the hatchet struck hard, planting its heavy blade quite securely right through both panels of the hollow core door. In a moment, Lobster was gripping the hatchet again. He yanked it out and pushed the door open. Ding had not had time to lock it as he raced through. Lobster had now entered the connecting bathroom en route to Ding's bedroom at the very end of the house. He smirked as he believed his prey was now trapped and primed for certain slaughter. But alas, Ding was more than fast. He was a master strategist as well. He had already made 2 excellent moves in this little game of hatchet chess. Now would come his third move, a checkmate, if you will. A junior yachtsman does not win over 300 regattas without being a great strategist, a skill honed over time by being forced to outfox a bunch of other junior yachtsmen trying to outfox everyone else. As Lobster crept quietly through the bathroom, Ding was just as quietly creeping through the French doors to the patio. He stepped on it, accelerated at full speed, and was gone in a flash. Still crouched on Lobster's bed, I saw him zoom past. This time, out through the screen door, into the backyard he raced, around to the front yard and down the street. As Lobster bent down, hatchet at the ready, to peek beneath the bed, Ding was walking into Cricket's garage a block away. He escaped. It was a very close call, as close as any I remember in what were many close calls growing up. Lobster flipped my favorite hatchet back into its convenient storage spot, wedged into the top of his former colonial-style desk, and we both headed outside to see what was going on in the neighborhood. I was reminded more than once, when doing business with Lobster, you always want to remember, buyer beware. Chapter 35 is up next, and it's called Caveat Emptor.